it chapter by chapter, one bite at a time. So many adventures and mountains we can climb. Take it word for word, line by line, one bite at a time.
Welcome to Bite at a Time Books, where we read you your favorite classics one bite at a time. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read, and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. If you want to know what's coming next and vote on upcoming books, sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. You'll also find our new t-shirts in the shop, including podcast shirts and quote shirts from your favorite classic novels. Be sure to follow my show on your favorite podcast platform so you get all the new episodes. You can find most of our links in the show notes, but also our website, biteatatimebooks.com, includes all of the links for our show, including to our Patreon to support the show, and YouTube, where we have special behind the narration of the episodes. We're part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you'd also like to hear what inspired your favorite classic authors to write their novels, and what was going on in the world at the time, check out the Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please note, while we try to keep the text as close to the original as possible, some words have been changed to honor the marginalized communities who've identified the words as harmful, and to stay in alignment with Bite at a Time Books' brand values. Today we'll be continuing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Chapter 5. It is not necessary to be drunk in order to be immortal. On the following day, as the sun was declining, the very rare passers-by on the Boulevard du Maine pulled off their hats to an old-fashioned hearse, ornamented with skulls, crossbones, and tears. This hearse contained a coffin covered with a white cloth, over which spread a large black cross, like a huge corpse with drooping arms, a mourning coach in which could be seen a priest in his surplice, and a choir boy in his red cap followed. 2 undertaker's men, in gray uniforms trimmed with black, walked on the right and the left of the hearse. Behind it came an old man in the garments of a laborer who limped along. The procession was going in the direction of the Vaugirard Cemetery. The handle of a hammer, the blade of a cold chisel, and the antennae of a pair of pincers were visible, protruding from the man's pocket. The Vaugirard Cemetery formed an exception among the cemeteries of Paris. It had its peculiar usages, just as it had its carriage entrance and its house door, which old people in the quarter, who clung tenaciously to ancient words, still called the Porte Cavalière and the Porte Pienton. The Bernardines Benedictines of the Rue Petit Picpus had obtained permission, as we've already stated, to be buried there in a corner apart and at night, the plot of land having formerly belonged to their community. The gravediggers, being thus bound to service in the evening in summer and at night in winter in the cemetery, they were subjected to a special discipline. The gates of the Paris cemeteries closed, at that epoch, at sundown, and this being a municipal regulation, the Vaugirard Cemetery was bound by it like the rest. The carriage gate and the house door were 2 contiguous grated gates adjoining a pavilion built by the architect Pernet and inhabited by the doorkeeper of the cemetery. These gates, therefore, swung inexorably on their hinges at the instant when the sun disappeared behind the dome of the Invalides. If any gravedigger were delayed after that moment in the cemetery, there was but one way for him to get out: his gravedigger's card furnished by the Department of Public Funerals. A sort of letterbox was constructed in the porter's window. The gravedigger dropped his card into this box. The porter heard it fall, pulled the rope, and the small door opened. If the man had not his card, he mentioned his name. The porter, who was sometimes in bed and asleep, rose, came out and identified the man, and opened the gate with his key. The gravedigger stepped out, but had to pay a fine of 15 francs. This cemetery, with its peculiarities outside the regulations, embarrassed the symmetry of the administration. It was suppressed a little later than 1830. The cemetery of Montparnasse, called the Eastern Cemetery, succeeded to it, and inherited that famous dram shop next to the Vaujard Cemetery, which was surmounted by quinze painted on a board, and which formed an angle, one side on the drinkers' tables and the other on the tombs, with this sign, Au Bon Coin. The Vaujard Cemetery was what may be called a faded cemetery. It was falling into disuse. Dampness was invading it. The flowers were deserting it. The bourgeois did not care much about being buried in the Vaujard. It hinted at poverty. Père Lachaise, if you please. To be buried in Père Lachaise is equivalent to having furniture of mahogany. It is recognized as elegant. The Vaujard Cemetery was a venerable enclosure planted like an old-fashioned French garden. Straight alleys, box, thoya trees, holly, ancient tombs beneath aged cypress trees, and very tall grass. In the evening, it was tragic there. There were very lugubrious lines about it. The sun had not yet set when the hearse with the white pall and the black cross entered the avenue of the Vaujard Cemetery. The lame man who followed it was no other than Fauchelevert. The interment of Mother Crucifixion in the vault under the altar, the exit of Cosette, the introduction of Jean Valjean to the dead room, all had been executed without difficulty, and there had been no hitch. Let us remark in passing that the burial of Mother Crucifixion under the altar of the convent is a perfectly venial offense in our sight. It is one of the faults which resemble a duty. The nuns had committed it, not only without difficulty, but even with the applause of their own consciences. In the cloister, what is called the government is only an intermeddling with authority, an interference which is always questionable. In the first place, the rule. As for the code, we shall see. Make as many laws as you please, men, but keep them for yourselves. The tribute to Caesar is never anything but the remnants of the tribute to God. A prince is nothing in the presence of a principle. Fauchelevert limped along behind the hearse in a very contented frame of mind. His twin plots, the one with the nuns, the one for the convent, the other against it, the other with Monsieur Madeleine, had succeeded to all appearance. Jean Valjean's composure was one of those powerful tranquillities which are contagious. Fauchelevert no longer felt doubtful as to his success. What remained to be done was a mere nothing. Within the last 2 years, he had made good Father Mestienne a chubby-cheeked person drunk at least 10 times. He played with Father Mestienne. He did what he liked with him. He made him dance according to his whim. Mestienne's head adjusted itself to the cap of Fauchelevert's will. Fauchelevert's confidence was perfect. At the moment when the convoy entered the avenue leading to the cemetery, Fauchelevert glanced cheerfully at the hearse and said half aloud as he rubbed his big hands, "Here's a fine farce." All at once, the hearse halted. It had reached the gate. The permission for interment must be exhibited. The undertaker's man addressed himself to the porter of the cemetery. During this colloquy, which always is productive of a delay of from 1 to 2 minutes, someone, a stranger, came and placed himself behind the hearse beside Fauchelevert. He was a sort of laboring man who wore a waistcoat with large pockets and carried a mattock under his arm. Fauchelevert surveyed the stranger. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man replied, "The gravedigger." If a man could survive the blow of a cannonball full in the breast, he would make the same face that Fauchelevert made. "The gravedigger?" "Yes." "You?" "I." "Father Mestienne is the gravedigger." "He was." "What?" "He was." "He is dead." Fauchelevert had expected anything but this, that a gravedigger could die. It is true, nevertheless, that gravediggers do die themselves. By dint of excavating graves for other people, one hollows out one's own. Fauchelevert stood there with his mouth wide open. He had hardly the strength to stammer. "But it is not possible." "It is so." "But," he persisted feebly, "Father Mestienne is the gravedigger." "After Napoleon, Louis XVIII. After Mestienne, Gribier."
Peasant, my name is Gribier.
Fauchelevert, who was deadly pale, stared at the scribier. He was a tall, thin, livid, utterly funereal man. He had the air of an unsuccessful doctor who had turned gravedigger. Fauchelevert burst out laughing. "Ah," said he, "what queer things do happen. Father Mestienne is dead, but long live little Father Lenoir. Do you know who little Father Lenoir is? He is a jug of red wine. It is a jug of Syrène Morbigot, of real Paris Syrène. Ah, so old Mestienne is dead. I am sorry for it. He was a jolly fellow. But you are a jolly fellow too, are you not, comrade? We'll go and have a drink together presently." The man replied,
I've been a student. I passed my 4th examination. I never drink.
The hearse had set out again and was rolling up the grand alley of the cemetery. Fauchelevert had slackened his pace. He limped more out of anxiety than from infirmity. A gravedigger walked on in front of him. Fauchelevert passed the unexpected Gribier once more in review. He was one of those men who, though very young, have the air of age and who, though slender, are extremely strong.
Comrade,
cried Fauchelevert. The man turned round.
I am the convent gravedigger. My colleague,
said the man. Fauchelevert, who was illiterate but very sharp, understood that he had to deal with a formidable species of man, with a fine talker. He muttered,
So Father Mestienne is dead.
The man replied,
Completely. The good God consulted his notebook, which shows when the time is up. It was Father Mestienne's turn. Father Mestienne died.
Fauchelevert repeated mechanically,
The good God. The good God,
said the man authoritatively.
According to the philosophers, the eternal Father. According to the Jacobins, the Supreme Being.
Shall we not make each other's acquaintance? Stammered Fauchelevert.
It is made. You are a peasant. I am a Parisian.
People do not know each other until they have drunk together. He who empties his glass empties his heart. You must come and have a drink with me. Such a thing cannot be refused.
Business first.
Fauchelevert thought, I am lost. They were only a few turns of the wheel distant from the small alley leading to the nuns' corner. The gravedigger resumed.
Peasant, I have 7 small children who must be fed. As they must eat, I cannot drink.
And he added, with the satisfaction of a serious man who is turning a phrase well,
Their hunger is the enemy of my thirst.
The hearse skirted a clump of cypress trees, quitted the grand alley, turned into a narrow one, entered the wasteland, and plunged into a thicket. This indicated the immediate proximity of the place of the sepulture. Fauchelevert slackened his pace, but he could not detain the hearse. Fortunately, the soil, which was light and wet with the winter rains, clogged the wheels and retarded its speed. He approached the gravedigger.
They have such a nice little Argentia wine, murmured Fauchelevert. Villager, retorted the man. I ought not be a gravedigger. My father was a porter at the Parentium, town hall. He destined me for literature, but he had reverses. He had losses on change. I was obliged to renounce the profession of author, but I am still a public writer.
So you are not a gravedigger, then, returned Fauchelevert, clutching at this branch, feeble as it was.
One does not hinder the other, I cumulate.
Fauchelevert did not understand this last word.
Come, have a drink, said he.
Here a remark becomes necessary. Fauchelevert, whatever his anguish, offered a drink, but he did not explain himself on one point. Who was to pay? Generally, Fauchelevert offered, and Father Mestienne paid. An offer of a drink was the evident result of the novel situation created by the new gravedigger, and it was necessary to make this offer. But the old gardener left the proverbial quarter of an hour named after Rabelais in the dark, and that not unintentionally. As for himself, Fauchelevert did not wish to pay, troubled as he was. The gravedigger went on with a superior smile.
One must eat. I have accepted Father Mestienne's reversion. One gets to be a philosopher when one has nearly completed his classes. To the labor of the hand I join the labor of the arm. I have my scrivener's stall in the market of the Rue de Service. You know, the umbrella market. All the cooks of the Red Cross apply to me. I scribble their declarations of love to the raw soldiers. In the morning, I write love letters. In the evening, I dig graves, such as life. Rustic.
The hearse was still advancing. Fauchelevert, uneasy to the last degree, was gazing about him on all sides. Great drops of perspiration trickled down from his brow.
But,
continued the gravedigger,
a man cannot serve two mistresses. I must choose between the pen and the mattock. The mattock is ruining my hand.
The hearse halted. The choir boy alighted from the mourning coach. Then the priest. One of the small front wheels of the hearse had run up a little on a pile of earth beyond which an open grave was visible.
What a farce this is,
repeated Fauchelevert in consternation. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books today, while we read a bite of one of your favorite classics. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, and I hope you come back tomorrow for the next bite of Les Miserables. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com and check out the shop. You can check out the show notes or our website, biteatatimebooks.com, for the rest of the links for our show. We'd love to hear from you on social media as well.